Hello, and welcome to SDCERS Retirement Orientation for New City Employees. My name is Jessica Taylor, and I am SDCERS Communications Manager. Please note that SDCERS only handles pension-related benefits, and this video will not cover any information regarding 401ks, SPSP accounts, 401A, or 457B plans. Please contact Risk Management for more information about city-sponsored retirement accounts other than your pension benefit. As a new SDCERS member, you belong to a specific pension plan tier based on your membership classification, which is either general, safety police, safety fire, or safety lifeguard, and your initial hire date with the city. This video will discuss the most recent plan tiers for each membership classification, which generally apply to new hires. However, if you previously worked for the city and have been rehired, please be advised that you might belong to a different plan tier. Please contact SDCERS directly to confirm which plan tier is yours. You can find the details of your specific plan tier by going to our website at www.sdcers.org and either going to Resources and then clicking Retirement Plan Summaries, or just clicking City in the Look Up Your Benefits box in the top right corner of the screen. Once you click on your corresponding membership classification and hire date, you can browse through all kinds of information specific to your plan tier, such as your membership contribution rate, eligibility requirements, retirement factors, and more. For example, if you are a new general member, you belong to the plan tier circled in my screenshot here. An SDCERS pension is a defined benefit plan. This means that when you become age and service eligible, you can retire and begin receiving a monthly pension benefit for the rest of your life, no matter how old you live to be or what happens to the financial markets. However, you are confined to the single monthly payment during your retirement. You will not be able to withdraw more or less than that monthly amount, and there is no such thing as taking out a loan against your pension. A defined contribution plan, on the other hand, would be like a 401k or a 401A plan. With these plans, you make contributions throughout your career. Your employer may or may not match all or part of your contributions, and it's all invested in the market. You have some control over the investment decisions with these plans, with the ability to opt for higher or lower risk investments. When you retire, you can begin withdrawing from this account, and you can withdraw as much or as little as often as you'd like. However, the funds in these types of retirement accounts are subject to market volatility, and it is possible that you may run out of money before you die. Your base pension benefit will be calculated according to your age at retirement, your service credit, and your final compensation. We'll get into that more later. But whatever this base benefit is calculated at on the day that you retire will never decrease. That initial calculation will be the minimum amount you will ever receive as your monthly benefit. On the contrary, your monthly pension benefit may actually increase up to 2% every July after you retire, due to the annual cost of living adjustment, commonly referred to as the COLA. The COLA is determined by the Consumer Price Index, which is published by the federal government's Bureau of Labor Statistics each year, which, in a nutshell, summarizes how the economy did during the previous calendar year, whether there was any inflation or deflation. Lastly, you may also receive what's called a COLA annuity, or a cost of living annuity, which is a one-time increase added to your monthly benefit, funded entirely by your own contributions and calculated on your date of retirement. However, the COLA annuity does not apply to new police hires. You may also receive another one-time increase called the surviving spouse annuity, but we'll talk more about that later. All I want you to know for now is that your member contributions, which are deducted from each paycheck, are divided into 3 separate buckets when that money comes to SDCERS. The majority of your contribution goes towards funding your base pension benefit, and the rest goes into a COLA annuity bucket and a surviving spouse annuity bucket. I'll refer back to these buckets a couple of times throughout the presentation, so I'm just laying the groundwork now. I mentioned being age and service eligible to retire. For the purposes of this presentation, retirement is when you actually begin receiving your monthly pension benefit, which could be as soon as you leave city employment, or it could be much later, depending on your circumstances. General members become eligible to retire when they are 55 or older and have at least 20 years of service credit, or at age 62 with at least 10 years of service credit. Note that you must meet both criteria. If you are 61 years old with 19 years of service credit, you will still have to wait until you are either 62 or have 20 years of service credit, whichever comes first. Safety members can retire a little bit earlier at age 50 or older if they have at least 20 years, or at age 55 with at least 10 years. But what happens if a member leaves the city before becoming eligible to retire? Well, it depends. If the member has at least 10 years of service credit when they leave, but they just aren't yet age eligible to retire, then they are what we call a deferred vested member. This means that at some point in the future, wherever they are when they become age eligible, they can retire and begin receiving their monthly pension benefit from SDCERS. Of course, if they withdraw their contributions when they leave the city, they forfeit their future right to receive a pension. If the member does not have enough service credit to eventually become eligible for a pension, they have the option of leaving their contributions on deposit with SDCERS or withdrawing them. If they leave their contributions, the funds will continue to earn annual compounded interest at the current earnings rate of 6.5%, applied every June 30th. In this case, the member would simply pick up where they left off regarding their pension benefits if they were ever to return to city employment in the future. The member may also be able to establish reciprocity if they get a job at a reciprocal system, which we'll talk more about in a minute. The member would also have the option to withdraw their funds at any time after terminating city service. They could do this as a lump sum payment of their contributions and interest, which would be subject to federal and possibly state tax withholding, or they could roll over the funds to a qualified plan. If this member ever returned to city employment in the future, they would have the option to repay their contributions and interest as a lump sum payment in order to pick up where they left off in terms of service credit and contribution rates. Also, withdrawing their contributions means the member would not be able to establish reciprocity elsewhere. Reciprocity is the idea that you can move from one employer in a California public retirement system to an employer in a different reciprocal California public retirement system and combine the service credit earned at both in order to fulfill vesting requirements. So if you earn 5 years of service credit at SDCERS, then establish reciprocity at the county, for example, and then you work there for an additional 5 years, you would have 10 years of total service credit, and therefore you would be service vested. In this example, when you become age eligible to retire from both systems, your retirement would be simultaneous and you would begin receiving a pension benefit from SDCERS based on your city service credit and a second pension benefit from the county based on your time worked there. There are very specific rules surrounding reciprocity, so please review our reciprocity fact sheet on our website for more in-depth information on this topic. Okay, so how is your pension funded? There are 3 funding sources: investment returns, the city's annual contribution, and member contributions. The most significant funding source is our investment returns. All of your contributions and the city's contributions are invested in SDCERS Trust Fund, which is carefully managed by our investment staff and the SDCERS Investment Committee. Generally, 60 to 70% of a member's pension benefit is funded by investment earnings. Our current expected average rate of return over the long term is 6.5%, which is why that is currently the interest rate applied to your contribution account each year. Please note that it is possible SDCERS Board may change the expected rate of return in the future. Unlike a defined contribution plan, you do not have any control over how your contributions are invested. However, regardless of how our investment portfolio actually performs in a given year, you are guaranteed annual compounded interest at SDCERS' expected rate of return. The city funds your pension by making an annual payment to the SDCERS Trust Fund as a whole, and the amount that the city pays in a given year is determined by our actuary. This means that the city does not match your pension contributions like an employer may do for a defined contribution plan. In fact, no portion of the city's contribution goes into your individual SDCERS contribution account. So if you were to withdraw your account in the future, you would only receive a return of your contributions plus accrued interest. You are the third source of funding. Member contributions are deducted from each paycheck that you receive from the city. Every pay period, you should see a pre-tax deduction on your paycheck that may look something like my little mock paycheck here. Remember I said earlier, your member contributions are divided between 3 separate buckets when the money comes to SDCERS. The majority goes towards funding your base pension benefit, and the rest is divided between your COLE annuity and surviving spouse annuity buckets. The amount that you contribute each pay period is calculated as a percentage of your pensionable pay on that paycheck. And the word pensionable is important here because there are some pay types that are not pensionable and therefore not included when we calculate your contributions or ultimately when we calculate your pension benefit. Overtime pay is generally the most significant non-pensionable pay type. So if your paycheck is $2,500 and $500 of that paycheck is overtime pay, your contribution will only be calculated as a percentage of the first $2,000 of base pay. The percentage used to calculate your contribution is according to your plan tier and how old you are when you first become a member of SDCERS. In general, the older you are when you join SDCERS, the higher your contribution rate will be. That's because when you join at an older age, you typically will have less time to contribute to your pension before you become eligible to retire, which means less time for your contributions to earn interest. The majority of general members in the most recent plan tier contribute between 7 and 13% of each paycheck, while the majority of safety members contribute between 13 and 20%. There are 2 main reasons for this difference. The first is that safety members have those lower age eligibility requirements. So if they can retire at a younger age, that means, again, less time for their contributions to sit in our trust fund and earn interest. And 2, safety members typically have higher retirement factors than general members, so they have to contribute more in order to fund their higher benefits. Okay, so now we know how your pension is funded. Let's talk about how your monthly pension benefit will actually be calculated when you retire. Your base pension benefit formula is your retirement factor multiplied by your service credit multiplied by your final compensation. First up is your retirement factor. This is a percentage determined by your plan tier and your age at retirement. Factors generally increase with retirement age, maxing out at age 65 for general members and age 55 for safety members. Each plan tier's retirement factor chart can be found in its retirement plan summary on our website, which we talked about in the beginning of this presentation. This first retirement factor chart is for the most recent general member plan tier. As you can see, if you retire at the earliest possible age, 55, the factor is 1%. It then increases with every year increase in retirement age until it maxes out at 2.6% at age 65. Please note that even though it's not shown on the chart, your retirement factors are prorated in quarterly increments. So let's look at what the factor would be if you were to retire at age 60 and a half. You can see at age 60, the factor is 2%, and at 61, it's 2.12%. So if your age at retirement is 60 and 7 months, then the prorated factor would be 2.06%. Also, this plan tier has a benefit cap of 80%. That means that your base pension benefit cannot be greater than 80% of your final compensation. We'll discuss final compensation more in a few minutes, but for now, consider it to be approximately equal to whatever your base salary is when you retire. So let's look at a couple of examples to demonstrate how this benefit cap works. In this example, you are retiring at age 60 with a $100,000 final compensation, just to use a nice round number. Since the benefit cap is 80%, your pension benefit initially cannot be greater than $80,000. You would only reach that 80% benefit cap if you have at least 40 years of service credit. Follow the math. The factor at age 60 is 2%, multiplied by 40 years of service credit, multiplied by your final compensation of $100,000. This gives you your maximum initial base benefit of $80,000. Now, if you retire at age 65 or older, you will hit that cap at around 31 years of service credit. The factor at age 65 or older is 2.6%, multiplied by just under 31 years of service credit, multiplied by your $100,000 final compensation, gives you your initial max benefit of $80,000. So another way of saying this is if you have around 31 years of service credit at age 65, your pension benefit will not increase no matter how much longer you continue to work, unless your salary increases in the future, because a salary increase in this case would be the only thing that can raise that benefit cap for you. Now let's look at the retirement factors for the most recent safety member plan tiers, which start at 2.5% at age 50 and increase 0.1% with each year increase in retirement age, maxing out at 3% at age 55 or older. These members have a 90% benefit cap. So let's look at a couple of examples of benefit caps for safety members. Let's say your final compensation is $100,000 and you retire at age 50, which means your factor is 2.5%. The benefit cap is 90%, which means your maximum base benefit is $90,000. Safety members in this example would reach their cap if they have at least 36 years of service credit, which is actually impossible since that means they would have had to begin working at age 14. Now, if you work for 5 more years and retire at age 55 instead, then you would reach your 90% cap once you've earned 30 years of service credit. So by the time they reach 55 years old, if a safety member has 30 or more years of service credit, then working longer will not increase their pension benefit unless they receive a salary increase in the future. Let's move on to the second element in the pension benefit formula, service credit. Every pay period that you work for the city and you make your biweekly member contribution, you earn 0.038356 years of service credit. That number is not overly important. The city is on a biweekly pay schedule, so working 2 weeks is equivalent to working approximately 0.038356 years. By making that biweekly contribution, the member is actually purchasing service credit for those 2 weeks. You are just buying your service credit in 2-week increments as you work. Normally, that is the only way to accrue service credit. It's also possible to purchase certain periods of time where you were not working for the city and therefore not making your member contributions. For example, you can buy back periods of time when you were on LTD or long-term disability, FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, or military leave once you have returned from that period of leave. Please review our purchase of service credit fact sheet for more information on this topic. In general, the more service credit that you have when you retire, the higher your monthly pension benefit will be, with the caveat of that benefit cap we talked about, which is different depending on your plan tier. But therefore, after a certain point, no matter how much additional service credit a member earns, their benefit cannot increase anymore once they've reached their cap, unless their final compensation increases. Which brings us to the last element of the pension benefit formula, final compensation. Final compensation for the most recent plan tiers is calculated as the average of your 3 highest years' pensionable salaries. This is generally calculated as the pensionable pay that you received during the last 3 years of your city career, averaged over those 3 years. However, remember that some pay types are not pensionable, such as overtime pay or flex benefits. So those would not be included in this calculation. Let's look at a couple of example pension benefit calculations. Meet Sam Diego, our little mascot. Here, Sam is a general member hired sometime after July of 2009, and he wants to retire as early as possible at age 55. His factor will be 1%. We'll say his final compensation is $60,000, and he's got exactly 20 years of service credit. His formula would be 1% times 20 years times $60,000, giving him a pension benefit of approximately $1,000 a month, or $12,000 per year. Of course, this does not include the COLE annuity or any future cost of living adjustments. So in reality, his monthly payment would be slightly higher. Now let's see what happens if Sam waits 10 years to retire at age 65 instead. His factor increases to 2.6%. We'll say his final compensation stayed the same just to keep it consistent. And his service credit is now 30 years. So 2.6% times 30 years times $60,000 gives him an initial base benefit of just under $4,000 per month. So now he's making a little bit less than $47,000 per year in pension benefits, again, before the COLE annuity or any future COLAs are added. Let's quickly look at 2 similar examples for safety members in the most recent safety plan tiers, which all have the same retirement factors. So here we have Safety Sam, who wants to retire as early as possible at age 50. His factor will be 2.5%. His final compensation is, again, $60,000, and he has exactly 20 years of service credit. So his formula is 2.5% times 20 years times 60,000, giving him an initial base pension benefit of approximately $2,500 per month, or $30,000 per year. If Safety Sam waits 5 years to retire at age 55 instead, his factor maxes out at 3%, and his service credit is, of course, now 25 years. 3% factor times 25 years times $60,000 gives him a base pension benefit of $3,750 per month, or about $45,000 per year. Okay, moving on from benefit calculations, let's talk about what happens if a member becomes permanently disabled at some point during their career, such that they are forced to retire. There are two types of disability retirements. The first is the industrial disability retirement. This applies when a member becomes permanently disabled due to their city job, and their disability cannot be accommodated. This benefit is equal to 50% of the member's final compensation, and it is non-taxable. There are no service credit or age requirements to receive this benefit. However, please note that qualifying for workers' compensation benefits does not necessarily mean that you are eligible for an industrial disability retirement. There are different requirements and standards. The second type of disability retirement is the non-industrial disability retirement. This applies only if a member has at least 10 years of service credit and they become permanently disabled not due to their city job. So, for example, an off-duty car accident. The non-industrial disability retirement is equal to 1/3 of the member's final compensation. But unlike the industrial disability retirement, this benefit is taxable. If you are ever diagnosed with a terminal illness or life-threatening situation while you are working for the city, please contact SDCERS immediately to determine if you are eligible for a disability retirement, which may allow you to leave a lifetime death benefit to your spouse or other family member. You can only receive a disability retirement while you are still alive. This is why we recommend completing and providing SDCERS with a power of attorney form in case you become incapacitated. This form is available on SDCERS website under the Resources tab, and we'll talk a little bit more about powers of attorney later on. For more in-depth information about disability retirements, please review the Disability Retirement Fact Sheet on our website under Resources and Learn About. So what happens to your SDCERS benefits if you die? Well, it depends on the circumstances. If a member dies while they are still working for the city, then they will leave behind one of 3 types of active death benefits. The first and most straightforward type of active death benefit applies if the member is still working for the city when they die, but neither of the other 2 types of death benefits apply. In this case, the member's beneficiary would receive all of the member's contributions and interest, plus an additional payment equal to up to 50% of the member's final compensation. This death benefit is a one-time lump sum payment. If the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board determines that the member's death was caused by their city job, then the industrial death benefit may apply. However, this type of death benefit is only applicable if the member's surviving spouse was named as their sole primary beneficiary, or if the member has minor children. If the named beneficiary is the member's surviving spouse, then he or she will receive a lifetime monthly benefit equal to 50% of the member's final compensation. So if the member's final compensation on the date of death is $60,000 per year, then the annual industrial death benefit paid to the surviving spouse would be $30,000 per year, or about $2,500 per month. If there is no surviving spouse, but there are minor children, then this monthly payment will be paid to each child until they turn 18. If there is no named surviving spouse and no minor children, then the active death benefit applies instead. If the member was eligible to retire when they died, then the death while eligible benefit may apply. This benefit is equal to 50% of what the member's pension benefit would have been had they retired on the day that they died. So to use our previous pension benefit calculation example, if the member's annual benefit would have been $45,000 had they retired on their date of death, then the annual death while eligible benefit paid to their surviving spouse would be $22,500, or about $18.75 per month. Note that this death benefit works just like the industrial death benefit in that it only applies if the surviving spouse is named as the sole primary beneficiary or if the member leaves behind minor children, and it's paid in the same manner. However, if a member dies after they have terminated city service but before they retire, then the only death benefit their beneficiary will receive is a refund of their member contributions plus interest. This is true even if the member was eligible to retire when they died. Now, if the member dies after they have retired from the city, meaning that they have begun receiving their monthly pension benefit, the death benefits would be very different. The most significant death benefit a retiree can leave behind is what's called a continuance benefit. Whether or not a retiree is eligible to leave a continuance benefit and how the continuance benefit is calculated will depend on the retirement benefit option that they chose when they retired, which we're going to discuss in just a few slides. But in a nutshell, the way the continuance works is the member can designate one person as their continuance beneficiary when they retire, and if that person outlives the member, then the continuance beneficiary will continue to receive a portion of the member's pension benefit every month for the rest of their life. So it is a lifetime monthly death benefit. The continuance benefit will also continue to accrue the COLA every July, just like the member's pension benefit. However, please note that the continuance beneficiary designation is permanent and irrevocable. It can never be changed once the member retires. So if the continuance beneficiary dies before the retiree, or in some cases, if the continuance beneficiary was the member's spouse and they are divorced when the member dies, then unfortunately, in either of those cases, the continuance benefit would simply be forfeited. The other death benefit that all retirees leave behind is what's called the $2,000 retiree death benefit and other payable monies. The $2,000 is intended to cover funeral expenses, and then the other payable monies part includes any unpaid pension benefits that are owed to the retiree when they died. So if they die mid-month, that could include a prorated portion of that month's pension benefit. This death benefit is a one-time lump sum payment, and the retiree can name as many beneficiaries as they want to receive it, including a trust, and they can also name primary and alternate beneficiaries. And they can change the beneficiary for this death benefit at any time, unlike the continuance beneficiary designation. For more in-depth information about death benefits, please review the Death Benefit Stack Sheet on our website under Resources on the Learn About page. Also, as an active member, please be sure that you have a beneficiary designated for your SDCERS account as soon as possible. You can update your beneficiaries at any time via the member portal. When you are ready to retire, you will have to select a retirement benefit option. This is another irrevocable decision that a member makes when they retire. There are 6 options to choose from: max benefit married, max benefit single, and reduced benefit options 1 through 4. First are the 2 max benefit options. We call them max benefit options for an obvious reason. They are calculated as the maximum base benefit a retiree can possibly receive without any reductions. Max benefit married is probably the most popular option among our married members. This option grants the maximum monthly benefit and allows the member to leave a 50% continuance benefit to their spouse or registered domestic partner, again without reducing the member's monthly benefit, and that's regardless of the age difference between the member and their spouse. This means that the surviving spouse will receive a lifetime monthly payment equal to half of whatever the member's monthly pension benefit was when they died. However, please note that in order to choose this option, the member does have to be legally married or in a registered domestic partnership with their continuance beneficiary on the day that they retire. And then also, in order for that 50% continuance benefit to be paid out after they die, the member must still be married to or in a domestic partnership with that same person on the day that they die. If they are divorced, widowed, or remarried, the continuance benefit is forfeited under this option. Max benefit single is what I like to call the max benefit because it is truly the greatest possible benefit you can receive. The eligibility requirements in order to choose max benefit single, are the opposite of max benefit married. The member cannot be legally married or in a domestic partnership on their retirement date. They can be engaged, they can have a girlfriend or boyfriend, they can get married the very next day, but they cannot be in a legal relationship on their retirement date. This benefit is calculated the same way as max benefit married, but instead of leaving behind a continuance benefit, because there is no continuance benefit associated with max benefit single, instead the member has the choice to either annuitize their surviving spouse contributions or take them back as a lump sum payment. So remember earlier we talked about those 3 buckets, and the surviving spouse contributions was one of those buckets. All of your contributions and interests that accrued in this bucket over the course of your career are ultimately intended to fund the continuance benefit after you die. However, with max benefit single, since there is no continuance benefit, you would get to take those contributions back, either as an annuity added to your base pension benefit or as a lump sum refund. If the member chooses to receive the surviving spouse annuity under this option, then SDCERS will take the value of their surviving spouse contribution bucket on the day that they retire, multiply that amount by an annuity factor, which is based on their life expectancy and some other factors, and then turn that bucket into a monthly payment that is permanently attached to the member's base benefit amount. For non-police members, the COLE annuity works the same way. The value of your COLE annuity bucket on your retirement date would be multiplied by an annuity factor, turned into an additional monthly payment, and permanently added to your base benefit calculation. So for example, let's say your base benefit is $2,000. Your COLE annuity comes to $300, and your surviving spouse annuity is $200. Your initial monthly pension payment would be $2,500 total. Then, future COLAs will apply to the entire amount, increasing that $2,500 by up to 2% in the first July following your retirement date. And that is why max benefit single is the max benefit. It grants the absolute greatest possible monthly pension benefit when you include the refund of the member's surviving spouse contributions, however the member chooses to take them. So when someone selects a reduced benefit option, there are usually extenuating circumstances. Generally, they either want to leave more than a 50% continuance benefit to their spouse, or they want to leave a continuance benefit to somebody that they are not married to. In order to do either of those things, the member must choose a reduced benefit option. For example, it's not uncommon for us to see members come in with some sort of fatal illness when they retire, and they know that they're going to die soon, or at least that their loved one's going to far outlive them. These members will often choose to leave a larger continuance benefit to their spouse or other loved one in exchange for a smaller pension benefit for their shortened lifetime. Sometimes members want to leave a continuance benefit to their child instead of their spouse, or maybe they're not married, they want to name a sibling, niece, nephew, or best friend as their continuance beneficiary. Again, in order to do that, they would have to choose a reduced benefit option. And sometimes members are actually required to select a reduced benefit option in order to name their former spouse as their continuance beneficiary, which would be due to a court order called a domestic relations order, or DRO, which would arise out of a divorce. The point is that everybody's personal circumstances are different, and different benefit options will make sense for different people. And before we go into more detail about each reduced benefit option, know that the size of the reduction to the member's pension benefit will depend on 2 things. 1, the percentage of their benefit that they leave to their continuance, and 2, the age difference between the member and their continuance beneficiary. In general, the greater the age gap, the greater the reduction. Reduced benefit option 1 is the least often chosen option because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense financially for most people. The way it works is the member would take a reduced monthly pension benefit for their lifetime, but if there are still funds left in their member contribution account when they die, meaning that the entire account hasn't already been used to pay out their monthly benefit, then whatever is left would go to the beneficiary that they designated. For example, a member who chose this option in the past had some sort of fatal illness when he retired, and he knew he wasn't going to live for more than a few years past retirement, but he didn't have a spouse or any family that he wanted to leave a continuance benefit to. So instead, he wanted to leave everything he had to charity. He selected option 1, died a couple of years later, and the remainder of his contribution account went to the charity that he designated. Reduced benefit option 2 allows you to leave a 100% continuance benefit. So whatever you are receiving as your monthly payment when you die, your continuance would begin receiving that same amount plus future COLAs every month for the rest of their life. We most commonly see this option chosen when a member again comes in with some sort of terminal illness when they retire and wants to ensure that their spouse or other loved one is taken care of financially after they die. So that they will take a sometimes significantly reduced monthly benefit for their shortened lifetime in exchange for leaving the maximum possible lifetime death benefit to their continuance beneficiary after they die. Option 3 leaves behind a 50% continuance benefit, so just like max benefit married, but with option 3, you can name somebody that you are not married to be your continuance beneficiary. This option is often chosen by members who want to name their child, usually an adult child, as their continuance beneficiary. And then finally, option 4 allows you to choose the percentage that you'll leave behind as the continuance. So you would pick any number between 0 and 100%. Sometimes a member has a court order that we talked about briefly on the last slide called a domestic relations order or DRO that comes out of a divorce, which sometimes requires the member to not only name their former spouse as their continuance beneficiary, but also requires them to leave their former spouse a specific percentage of their benefit as the continuance. Usually that number would correspond to the amount of time the member was married while working for the city. Okay, those are the 6 retirement benefit options that a member has to choose from when they retire. This concludes our overview of how an SDCERS pension works. The next thing you should do after completing this training is register your SDCERS member portal account, if possible. If you go to SDCERS.org and click on one of the many member portal buttons, it will take you to the portal login page. Then click Register and follow the instructions to create your account. Note that before you begin, you will need to know the amount of your most recent SDCERS contribution, which can be found on your paycheck under pre-tax deductions. If you have not yet received a paycheck, you will have to wait until then before you can register. It generally takes about 6 weeks from hire date before you are able to register. Make sure you pick challenge questions that are easy for you to remember the answers to. We also recommend that you use a personal email address to register your portal account, not your city email address. That way you will still have access to the email address you use after you retire. Once you are registered and able to log into your account, this is where you can update beneficiaries, monitor your SDCERS contribution account, apply for reciprocity or purchase of service credit contracts, utilize the benefit estimate calculator, and eventually begin the retirement process. You can find additional resources and educational materials on our website, again at sdcers.org, under the Resources tab. This blue rectangle on the right side of my slide will actually be on the left side of the website. We talked about retirement plan summaries in the beginning. This is where you can find details about your specific plan tier. I had the Learn About section expanded in my screenshot here. These are all of our fact sheets. You can ignore the drop fact sheet unless you are a rehire and were initially hired before July of 2005. Otherwise, the drop program will not be applicable to any city employees hired on or after July 1st, 2005. Also, the 1099-R fact sheet is only applicable to SDCERS retirees. And then the FAQs page is a good place to go if you don't know what you don't know. You can scroll through this, look at the questions on this page, and expand any that you'd like to see the answers to. Finally, the last thing I want to talk to you about is the special durable power of attorney. A power of attorney is a legal document that allows you to designate one person, called your attorney-in-fact, and give them the legal ability to do certain things on your behalf as if they were you. You don't have to have a power of attorney on file with us. It is entirely optional. If you don't have a power of attorney on file, that means that you are the only person we can talk to about your private SDCERS account information. So if your spouse, for example, were to call SDCERS and ask questions about your pension benefits, we would not be able to talk to them at all unless you are also on the phone with them. If you'd like to have a power of attorney on file with us, we highly recommend and actually request that you use our SDCERS Special Durable Power of Attorney form. This is a fillable PDF form available again on our website under the Resources tab. We recommend using this form for a couple of reasons. The first being that we created this form specifically for our members so that they would not have to hire a lawyer or anything like that in order to have a power of attorney in place. The other reason we recommend using this form is to make sure that you know exactly what you are and are not giving your attorney in fact the ability to do. Most people don't know that under California law, there is a list of powers that must be specifically stated in a power of attorney in order for those powers to transfer. This means that broad general language would not cover those powers. So if your power of attorney doesn't specifically state that your attorney in fact has the ability to do those things, then they cannot do them. The two powers on this list that could apply to your SDCERS account are the ability to designate or change beneficiaries and to reduce or modify a benefit payment option. So we have this form. It is special because it only applies to SDCERS. Your attorney, in fact, would not be able to use this form at any other financial institution. It is durable, which is a legal term that means this form becomes effective on the day that you sign it, and it remains effective until either you die or you withdraw it. If you become incapacitated, like you fall into a coma or something, this power of attorney remains in effect. The form itself is pretty straightforward. You will fill in the areas where indicated, and your attorney, in fact, will need to sign one of the pages, just indicating that they are aware they are being designated as your attorney, in fact. And you will need to attach a copy of their ID to the back of the form when you send it to us so that we can identify them if they were to call or come into the office in the future. There is a section that grants broad general powers, essentially allows SDCERS staff to talk to your attorney, in fact, and divulge your private SDCERS account information to them. Right below that is a section that grants optional specific powers. You will initial next to the ones that you want to transfer and leave blank any that you don't. Then there are a couple of pages of mandatory legal language, and the last 2 pages are signature pages. This form must be either notarized or witnessed by 2 adult witnesses, one or the other, not both. So you can take it to a public notary and pay the notary fee to have it notarized, or you can call over your best friend and neighbor and ask them to watch while you sign your page, and then they will sign the witness page, indicating that they witnessed your signature and you were not under duress. Once all of that is complete, you can send us your form, either via email, mail, or fax. If you email it to us, please make sure it is attached as a PDF document, as our firewalls will reject any emails containing non-PDF attachments. You can also withdraw your power of attorney at any time. It just needs to be done in writing. So again, email, mail, or fax. Thank you for listening to this presentation and learning about your SDCERS pension benefits. If you have any questions, you can contact our call center at 619-525-3600, open on regular business days from 9 a.m. to noon and 1 to 4 p.m. You can also send us an electronic inquiry via the Contact Us page on our website or through your member portal account. Thank you again and have a great rest of your day.